Greetings to you all. My name is Benjamin Ferencz. I'm speaking to you from Delray Beach, Florida. I want to thank Professor Powderly and the other members of his team and the members of the Grotius Center for inviting me to share some thoughts with you on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials. What have we learned? What have we still to learn from those trials? Let me begin by giving you a bit of my own personal background. I was born in a little village in Transylvania. My sister was born in the same bed I was a year and a half earlier. She is Hungarian. I was born, it was Romania. What I learned later in life, it doesn't matter where you were born and what you call it, it's how you treat the people. Our experience was to flee to the United States with no money, no friends, no language, and we were fortunate. My father was able to find a job as a janitor in a tenement house where we slept in the cellar, and in a place called Hell's Kitchen for a very good reason. It was a very high-density crime area. I had decided very early on that I would rather pursue the law than crime. I was fortunate to get a good education in New York through the use of City College and special high schools. I applied for admission to the Harvard Law School, and I was accepted and given a scholarship based on my first exam on criminal law. At just about that time, I was still at law school. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States was at war. Everybody I knew went down to enlist, including me. I had difficulties because I wasn't tall enough to be a pilot, which I wanted to be. But I did finally get in as a private in the artillery and assigned to General Patton's headquarters in due course. We landed on the beaches of Normandy, and as we were advancing into territory occupied by Germany, I was sent to General Patton's headquarters. I was told that my name had been forwarded from Washington, presumably from a professor at Harvard for whom I'd done the research for a book on war crimes. And what's a war crime? Was what they asked me. I had no idea. So I think I was the first man in the United States Army to deal with war crimes in World War II. That meant proceeding immediately into concentration camps as they were being liberated. Before that, we had Allied flyer cases where Allied flyers would be shot down. I don't celebrate 4th of July or Memorial Days. For me, those are days of mourning. And the horrors of having to go out and pick up pieces of American soldiers' flyers and hope you find a fingertip so you can identify the body. I have done that. I have also seen the concentration camps as they were liberated, with the incredible sights of people starving to death, lying dead or dying all around. All of these things, which seem quite incredible to a rational human mind, I have seen. And in my mind, it is synonymous with war. These are the things which happen in all wars. And I learned very early on that crimes are committed by individuals. This was a point made by Justice Jackson when he was charged of the prosecution of the big international military tribunal trial at Nuremberg. And everyone is entitled to a fair trial. Hermann Goering was given a fair trial before he committed suicide after being sentenced to death. So these type of experiences have certainly molded my approach to my later career and what I would do about it. I came to recognize that there is nothing quite as horrible as war. The notion that this is something glorious, which has been touted for centuries, that war is a way to fame and fortune and glory, in the modern age, that is not only dangerous, it's crazy. Because the present system is you take young people, if the two heads of state are unable to agree, they send them to a foreign country they may never have heard of, to kill people they don't even know, who never did them any harm, may never have harmed anyone. And then they rest, each side declares victory, and then they start again. And they spend billions of dollars on building new weapons, more and more capable of killing more and more people. That is the current system. You are lawyers. You're supposed to prevent that from happening. Law is not static. It has to be moved to change to meet the changing needs of society. This was an important point, also made not only by Justice Jackson, but by learned jurists everywhere. So this is the world in which I found myself, the world in which you find yourself, even more so. So what can you do if you're studying international criminal law? Well, first of all, you have to clarify what the law is. There's a lot of confusion about that. For example, the United Nations, in its first sessions, declared that aggression is a supreme international crime, that they should set up international criminal courts to deal with international crimes. And someone said, well, how do you define aggression? Then they decided to set up a special committee, and then followed by other special committees trying to define the term aggression. Hundreds of lawyers have met at the United Nations, and they have argued and quibbled about defining aggression. And it was only until fairly recently in Kampala that they agreed upon a definition which was so full of holes and so full of ambiguities that it's really an exaggeration to call it a useful definition to define what is a prohibited crime of aggression. I have gotten so fed up with that I said, look, let's try an additional path as well. I'd written books on it and articles and lectures and so on, all of which, incidentally, is available on my website. The definition of aggression was the excuse given for the big powers, led by the United States, didn't want to submit themselves to the jurisdiction of any international tribunal. So you run into the stumbling block of using the fact that there is no definition of aggression theoretically, and therefore we can't punish the crime of aggression. Therefore, it's perfectly legal to do what we're doing, go out and kill people you don't know in massive numbers, and with nuclear weapons, of course, they'll kill much more. You are now dealing with the capacity to kill everything on this planet. And several nations already have that capacity. The United States is certainly one of them. Russia is certainly another one. China is also another one. And there must be others as well that are either coming along or will be there soon. So you live in a very dangerous world. What is the answer to violence to settle disputes? If you don't have a court to determine which side is right, the combatants have no choice other than to try to use force to straighten it out. And if they use force in modern times, you see the consequences. Whole cities are destroyed. People flee for their lives in boats trying to cross a body of water, drowning on the way. And refugees running away from their home, which is being destroyed, seeking shelter somewhere in the world. And the world having to negotiate how many will you take, how many will I take, and meanwhile the people are living like dogs or dying of hunger, disease, and starvation. And I've seen that world in World War II as well, and the consequences of war. So my own conclusion has been no more war. We are beginning to move somewhat in that direction by the notion we used to call humanitarian intervention. Now they call it responsibility to protect, R2P, because they like fancy initials. The responsibility to protect ignores the fact that it should be by peaceful means only. You can't go, I'm going to protect one side by killing all people on the other side. There's no protection. So we have principles of law which require correction. That's where you come in. Your young students define aggression in a way which is satisfactory, which they haven't yet done. There was in 1972 a consensus definition of aggression. Justice Jackson certainly had a definition of aggression. So did all the other Allied powers. The Russians called it a crime against peace. So it's not that they don't have these definitions. They have them. They don't want to apply them. So what is the missing link, and where do you come in? The missing link is the political will. And what does political will mean? It means the people in power are not ready to yield that power, either for personal advantage or for national advantage, or out of fear that their religion is being jeopardized, or their nationality is being jeopardized, or their economic circumstances are being jeopardized, and they are willing to kill and die for those particular causes. Now, a few other obvious things which are not so obvious. Crimes are committed by individuals. This was also Justice Jackson, pure. What does that mean? That means you don't condemn the whole group and say, aha, we've got to kill them all. It's committed by individuals. And every individual is entitled to a fair trial. That's what our democracy is built on. So it's not a simple thing. It's just, there's good and evil, and everybody agrees on which is which. That's why we have laws which have to be specific and clear. That's where you come in. That's why we have to have judges. That's where the other lawyers come in. And it has to be settled by peaceful means only. We have to glorify peace, not violence. And at the moment, unfortunately, despite the fact that Nuremberg held that aggression is a supreme international crime, illegal war-making is a supreme international crime, those crimes continue today all over the world. And as we speak now, innocent people, men, women, and children, are being killed and starved because the legal system has let them down. That's the challenge which you face and which I have faced. And I don't want you to come away thinking that I am therefore a pessimist. I'm not. On the contrary, I consider myself a realist. Realist because I see the problems. I've indicated some of them. We have to change fundamental ways of thinking, changes of hearts and minds, to be prepared to be tolerant. Compromise is not a sign of weakness. You have to be willing to see the other fellow's point of view, even if you have to make some concessions. These are different things which have not been glorified in our society, which requires a vast restructuring of our educational system. It's underway now. And how do I know that? Well, I see it. All of the human rights groups that do exist today. There has been an awakening of the human conscience. When I went to law school, there was no such thing as international criminal law. There was no such thing as humanitarian law. They would laugh at you. What do you mean humanitarian law? You can't have such a thing. I knew René Cassin, who was the father really of humanitarian law principles. I knew a man who invented the term genocide as well. And these are concepts which are now being practiced in their infancy. As some of you may know, I was the chief prosecutor of one of the international criminal trials held at Nuremberg in the Einsatzgruppen case. The word Einsatzgruppen means action groups, where I accused and convicted 22 defendants of murdering in cold blood over 1 million men, women, and children. And that was my first case. And I thought about, what do I ask for? I have 22 defendants for the ridiculous reason they've only had 22 seats in the dock. There were 3,000 members of the Einsatzgruppe, and every single one of them was complicit in mass murder of innocent people, every single one. So I asked myself, what do I ask for? I have these 22 defendants selected by me on the basis of their rank and their education. These were well-educated, many of them with PhDs, many of them were generals in the SS. The victims were murdered because they didn't share the race, the religion, and the ideology of their executioners. I thought that was a horrible thing. I still do. So I asked the court to affirm by international criminal law the right of all people to live in peace and dignity regardless of their race or creed. It was, as I called it, a plea of humanity to law. And that was carefully thought out by me, carefully presented and accepted by the court, and quoted again many times as the International Criminal Court system evolved. So that's what I was trying to do, something quite different. Is it just? That's not justice, because there were 3,000 men who were never tried, also murderers. You can't talk about justice. We can talk about creating a new social system which recognizes the rights of all human beings to live as human beings. And we're a long way to go before we get there. That's where you come in. Because I think the best court in the world will be the court of public opinion. And you are the public opinion. Hell no, Mr. President, we won't go. You go. So we are on the verge of new thinking. Since people love to have slogans, and remember the slogans, I have my slogans too. Law, not war. It sounds so simple, 3 words, law, not war. You'd save billions of dollars every year. But you say, hey, Mr. Ferencz, how are you going to get it? I have 3 pieces of good advice for students. 1, never give up. 2, never give up. 3, I hear you saying, never give up. Remember what you said and carry it out. Good luck to you all.